Hi there, my name is Melissa Hellens. I'm with Skyline Properties. I'm one of the assistant branch managers here. And today I am going to show you how to write up a purchase and sale agreement on vacant land property. First things first, I am going to share my screen. I've gone ahead and already found the vacant land property that I would like to write an offer on. It's in Arlington. It's been on the market for 118 days. The original list price was $230. It's now $200,000. The marketing remarks, it does talk about there being power, water, and septic on the site, which is great. They're asking for Chicago title and Olympic escrow. Let's see some of the other things I want to look for. Commissions at 2.5%. I want to see how large. Let's see, it's just shy of 5 acres. It is the zoning jurisdiction. You'll hear that word, jurisdiction. Their jurisdiction is just Snohomish County. It's not in a city. And the zoning code is R5. So we are going to want to find out what R5 means in order for us to determine if this property is suitable for the buyer's intended use. Okay, so we'll get to that later. Some of the other things that I want to see here. Okay, there is electricity on the property, which is great. There's a septic system that's installed, which is great. And there's an available shared well that is something, all these items that we're going to have to take into consideration as we write up this offer. Okay, so I'm going to take a look at the supplements. It looks like the supplements, there's a legal description, which is great. Seller's disclosure form, which is great. It says here, plat parcel survey map. I'm going to look here to see what this looks like. This is not a survey. This is just a parcel map, and you can see the parcel is shaped triangularly, which may be an issue with setbacks, and it's something we should be mindful of. Okay, so I'm going to see this little button right here. It looks like a pen and paper. I'm going to go ahead and click on that. It's going to take me to transaction desk. And it's going to ask me to create, using Wizard, to create a transaction. And yes, that's what I want to do. There is no template for vacant land. There is a type here, and we're going to want to choose vacant land. Oh, not listing, but sale. We represent the buyer. I want to go ahead and import the data from Matrix. It's vacant land, the MLS number. I am the buyer broker, so that's going to be checked. And I do want to use Wizard. We're going to go ahead and create this transaction. Okay, so since we created the transaction, we have the MLS number. It went ahead and pulled the seller's information. It also pulled the address, the parcel number. There's obviously not going to be a year built because it is vacant. We're going to offer, because it's been on the market for 118 days, they've already reduced the price. 30,000. Let's go ahead and offer them 190,000. And then the commissions 2.5. We already confirmed that. So next, And we want the purchase and sale agreement date to be today. That's 30th. We want the offer expiration date to be tomorrow. The buyers are eager to get this property and they want to know as soon as possible when, so we're going to give the seller a day to review the offer and determine whether or not they want to make changes or if they just accept it as is. Closing date. For traditionally, residential closings are anywhere between 30 and 45 days. With vacant land, that's a lot different because there's a lot more that goes into vacant land than people realize. There is a lot, there's what's called a feasibility study, which we will go over, and there's a lot of information that needs to be gathered. And I'm going to put this closing date out 90 days approximately. I'm going to push it out to February 28th. And I'm going to stay in Wizard. I'm on step 2 of 5 on Wizard. I don't want to save and exit. I just want to hit the next button. And we would not head, and because we used Wizard, we've got the seller's information, the listing broker's information, buyer broker information, listing firm, and Skyline Properties. All the contacts are in there. I'm going to add, create a new contact. It's gonna be buyer. It's gonna be Buyer Smith. And we are gonna add, and I'll add my email in there just for the purposes of this. Okay, now we're gonna go next. Step 4, we are going to add the forms that we need for vacant land purchase. We are going to add form 25. And if you don't know what form, you can go ahead and click all statewide forms. Vacant land purchase and sale agreement pops right up. That's the form we need. We also need 22D, which is the optional clause addendum. So we'll click on that. We will need 22T, which is the title contingency addendum. We will need 22R because there's a well on the property. Okay. And like I said, if you don't know the form numbers, you can scroll through these. So let's see, the next one we need is a 22S for that septic. So I'm going to just scroll down, and this is just a different way of looking. There's my septic addendum. I want to add that. There is power on site, so I want to also add 22K, which allows escrow to pay off any, if say the power bill hasn't been paid. The power bill is a lienable utility, so if we include form 22K, escrow will pay the power at closing. And most importantly, with vacant land, we are going to need form 35R. No. F, sorry. 35F, the feasibility contingency form. Okay, so we have 6 items that were in our basket, and we're going to go ahead and add. And there they are. So we can go ahead and start filling in the forms this way. With the vacant land, like we already used the wizard, so they've already auto-populated a lot of the information. We've got the parcel number here. This property has an address. It has the purchase price of 190, so 190,000. We want the earnest money to be somewhere around, 1 to 3%. We'll go ahead and have earnest money be 5,000. Delivery day, we'll have that 2 days. Earnest money we will have delivered by 2 days. We will never click this form because it will never be held by the buyer's brokerage firm, which is Skyline Properties. We do not hold earnest money. That's the closing agent that does that. The closing agent is escrow. Okay. And we want to go ahead and have the default for forfeiture of earnest money versus seller's election of remedies. This is if the buyer pulls out of the contract without any legal authority. The only thing that they're going to be risking is $5,000. If you check this box of seller's election of remedies, then there could be a lot, it could be a lot more for your buyers. So that's why we do forfeiture of earnest money. Now they want to use Chicago Title. I have a relationship with Chicago Title, so I'm okay with that. I am going to, they wanted Olympic escrow, I believe. I'm going to actually ask to use in-house escrow because that's my escrow company that I have a relationship with, and I would like to have this contract run through my closing agent. Now they can counter that, but if you have a relationship with an escrow company and you know that they can close a deal on time and they do a good job, then it's okay for you to ask to use that escrow company. Now I want possession on closing. Okay. Services of closing agent for payment of utilities. We requested that form 22K. Now that's the utilities denim. There is power on site. I want to make sure that the power bill is paid, and that will be paid through escrow since we are using this form. Charges, assessments levied before but due after closing. Because I represent the buyer, I'm going to ask that anything be prepaid in full by seller at closing. This is another thing that may come back in a counter, and they may ask for the buyer to assume assessments that are levied before but due after closing. But just for the sake of this offer, we're going to ask for the buyer or the seller to prepay in full. We don't know if the seller is or is not a foreign person for the purposes of U.S. income taxation, so we're going to leave this form or this section of the form blank. Subdivision. The property this property is zoned R5. I happen to know that R5 you can only build one structure, so it's not going to be a subdividable property. I know that because I looked at the land use code to see what R5 was, and I don't want to get into that too much. But I do want you to be aware that you should know what the zone, like it's zoned R5. You should be able to find out what exactly that means. And we can go into that in a little more detail here as we get through this contract. But in this case, it's not required to be subdivided. We got a feasibility contingency. Now we are out about 90 days from our closing date. So I am going to go ahead and have a 70-day feasibility study. Contingency, I'm sorry, it expires after 70 days. And it may seem like a lot, but I will tell you it's going to require a lot of digging through, making sure that the property can be used for the intended use of the buyer. Okay. Information verification period expires, I'm going to say 10 days. That's the boilerplate. 10 days after mutual acceptance. That just allows you to verify that everything that's in the listing is accurate to the best of the seller and listing broker's ability. Now, agency disclosure, the buyer is represented by the buyer broker, that's me, and the seller is represented by the listing broker. We already know that the firm compensation is buyer brokerage firm's compensation is 2.5. That's paid as offered. Now it's time to add our addendas. The first one we're going to add. Now, we're not going to get financing on this property, and I'm going to tell you why. Land or vacant land is very challenging to get financing on. There's not a lot of lenders that can do it. Typically, when you do find a lender that can do it, and the reason why they can't, it's very difficult, is because there's no collateral on, there's no house on the vacant land. So they often require a rather large down payment, and you're looking at probably a minimum of 35% to put down. It is possible, but in this particular case and scenario, my buyer has cash and we're going to be offering $190,000 in cash to close. So it's time to add our optional clause addenda. We're going to add our utility addenda. We are going to add our title addenda. We are going to add our well addendum. Also our septic addendum. Most importantly, we are going to add 35F, which is the feasibility addenda. So that should cover us as far as filling out the first page of the form. Now, it's really important for you to read every single page of this form so you can explain to your buyers if there are any questions in a way that makes sense, right? You can't give them legal advice, but you can at least guide them through and point them in the right direction. Say they are curious about the information verification period. Well, that's gonna be found under paragraph W, information verification period. Unless satisfied or waived, buyer shall have the time period set forth in the specific term number. The boilerplate's 10 days after mutual acceptance, if not filled in, to verify all the information provided from the seller or the listing brokerage firm related to the property. This contingency shall be deemed satisfied unless buyer gives notice identifying the material inaccurate information within the time period set forth in the specific term number 16. Okay, so this is just a section of this 6-page agreement, and that's right here what you are explaining. So to know where to find these types of items is really important. We're going to go ahead and save and exit. Okay, we're going to go to next optional clause addendum. Okay, this addendum, I want you to go ahead and check square footage, lot size, encroachments. This, by checking this box, it's stating the listing broker and buyer broker shall make no representations concerning the lot size or accuracy of any information provided by the seller, the square footage of any improvements on the property, or whether or not there are any encroachments, fences, rockery buildings on the property or by the property on the adjacent properties. Buyer is advised to verify lot size, square footage, and encroachments to buyer's own satisfaction. So that protects you, the listing broker, and are you the buyer broker and the listing broker. Okay, we're just gonna leave this blank. We're just gonna get standard title insurance. We do want to check this box, the seller cleaning of the property. That's just make sure that there's no trash or debris or rubbish on the property at the time the buyer is taking possession. We want to make sure that all personal property is removed. Utilities, to the best of the seller's knowledge, it did say that there was a septic tank on site and a well, and a shared well. Okay, and we're not going to check anything else on this form, so go ahead and save and exit. Now we got the title contingency. So the title contingency allows the buyer to review to see if there's any easements on the property, covenants, conditions, or restrictions of record. One of the things that hopefully is on the title is that shared well agreement. Hopefully that agreement's been recorded and can be transferred to the buyer. So I'm going to go ahead and put here that the buyer shall have 10 days after. Now standard is 5, but I want to give my buyer a little bit more time here, because if there is you know, a shared well on or the title, that they can have the opportunity to go through that with the title company. And we're going to go ahead and click from the date of buyer's receipt of the preliminary commitment for title insurance. Not mutual acceptance, because we need more, like it didn't look like title's been ordered yet. So I also like to fill out, I don't like any blank dates. I like to actually insert, regardless if the boilerplate is 5 days, seller shall have 5 days after buyer's notice of disapproval to give buyer notice that seller will clear all disapproved exceptions. So say you weren't satisfied with the shared well agreement, but they had a relationship with the person they are sharing the agreement with that they can rectify. They could have 5 days to do so, in which case you can continue to move forward. So we're going to go ahead and save and exit. Okay, next form is the well addendum. So this in this particular case, this would be a good opportunity. As I'm writing an offer too, I come up with questions that I have for the listing broker. And one of the questions I would have for this particular offer is, how many people are on this shared well? I'm going to write this question down, and along with any other questions that I have, and I'm going to pick up the phone and I'm going to have a conversation with the listing broker. And I know that it's only 2 people that are on this shared well. So I found that out. We are going to give the seller 10 days to provide documentation about this this well and the shared well agreement and the maintenance records and everything else that we can possibly get our hands on regarding the shared well. Again, 5 days. If the buyers aren't happy, they can give notice within 5 days of disapproval, and the agreement shall terminate and the earnest money shall be refunded to the buyer. Okay, we want to test the water quality. So we're going to have an inspection of the water quality and the purity test. We want to have the opportunity to have the water quality purity test be submitted to a private lab for further evaluation if necessary. Okay, this water quality contingency shall conclusively be deemed waived. And sellers shall not be obligated to make any repairs or modifications unless within 15 days of mutual acceptance, buyer gives written notice disapproving of the inspection report and terminating the agreement, or proposing the repairs to the well related to the water quality or modifications of the agreement. Now, the water quantity contingency is another one. We'll give them 15 days. Okay. Seller's response to request for repairs, seller shall have, we'll give them 5 days. If not filled in, see, 3 days is the boilerplate. We're going to give them 5 days. And if the seller does not agree to the repairs or modifications proposed by the buyer, buyer shall have, we'll give them 3 days from either the day the buyer receives the seller's response, or if seller fails to timely respond, the day seller's response period ends, whichever is earlier, to accept the seller's response, at which time the contingency shall be satisfied, agree with the seller on other remedies, or disapprove the well inspection and terminate this agreement, in which event the earnest money shall be refunded to the buyer. Okay, so there's some things that need to happen here. And you're going to need to find a company that tests wells, tests water quality. If there's any transfer costs, we want to, because we represent the buyer, we want it to be paid by the seller. So if the parties acknowledge the water rights may not automatically transfer with title to the property, and the party should consult with an attorney to facilitate a transfer of any water rights. This is that shared, there should be some document, shared well document, and hopefully, like I said, it's recorded and it's something that could be viewed. Otherwise, you'll likely need to get an attorney involved to have something drafted that states that you now have rights to this shared well. We're going to save and exit. We got the septic addendum. And we know this is a private septic addendum. We want the maintenance records within 10 days. We, we want the seller shall provide buyer with a copy of the inspection report within 10 days. Mutual acceptance if seller has had the septic inspected, if necessary, pumped within 12 months. We want those records. And we also want the right as a buyer to attend the inspection. Okay. This agreement is conditioned on buyer's subjective satisfaction of the inspection report from the septic service company. This contingency shall be deemed waived unless buyer gives notice of disapproval of the inspection report within, we'll say, 5 days after receipt of the inspection report. If buyer gives timely notice of disapproval, the agreement will terminate and the earnest money shall be refunded to the buyer. We're going to go ahead and save and exit. Now the utilities is actually not going to be filled out. The seller will fill out the electricity where they get power from, and once they fill that out, then it can be signed. If the above information has not been filled in at the time of mutual acceptance of this agreement, then within 5 days of mutual acceptance of this agreement, seller shall provide the listing broker or buyer broker with the names and addresses of all the utility providers having lien rights affecting the property, and 2, buyer and seller authorized listing broker or buyer broker to insert this addendum into the contract. So this just, we know there's not going to be a sewer water because they have a well. We know there's not going to be sewer because they have septic, but there is electricity. We want to make sure that the electricity is paid. So escrow will pay that if you include this form. Now we have the feasibility contingency, and this to me is the most important form that you need to be aware of. We have our closing approximately 90 days out. We are going to go ahead and put in here that we want a 60-day feasibility study. Boilerplate's 20 days. The reason I put 60 days is because after mutual acceptance, this feasibility contingency, this allows enough time for the buyer to do due diligence of making sure that they can buy or they can build their 2,500 square foot dream home, right? So we're going to put 60 days. So after mutual acceptance, we got 60 days to confirm the suitability of the property for the buyer's intended use. This feasibility contingency shall conclusively be deemed waived unless buyer gives notice of disapproval on or before the feasibility contingency expiration date. If buyer gives a timely notice of disapproval, then this agreement shall terminate and the earnest money shall be refunded to the buyer. This is a timeline you are going to want to make sure everybody is aware of. You have 60 days, and buyer's due diligence includes, well, first I'll start by saying The buyer should not rely on any oral statements concerning the property made by the seller, the listing broker, or the buyer broker. Period. The buyer should inquire at the city or the county, which is the jurisdiction, right? We know this is Snohomish County. So they need to inquire with the county that the property is suitable. They should inquire about water and sewer. Obviously, we have the well and the septic, so that's not going to apply. But other special districts in which the property is located, buyer's inquiry shall include, but not be limited to, whether the property can be platted, developed, and or built on now or in the future, and that related costs, building or development moratorium applicable to or being considered for the property, any special building requirements, including setbacks. Remember how I said that the property was triangular shaped? There may be some issues with some setbacks there. Height limits, restrictions on where buildings may be constructed on the property, whether the property is affected by a flood zone, wetlands. There was a comment that said that the property was sloped, if that has any impact, shorelands, or any other environmentally sensitive areas, roads, school, fire, growth mitigation or impact fees that must be paid, the procedure and length of time necessary to obtain plat approval and or building permit, sufficient water, sewer, utility, and any other connection charges, all other charges that must be paid. Okay, so this is the point that I was trying to get at initially. There are all of these things that we don't know about this property. We know that it's the jurisdiction is Snohomish County, so we can guide our buyer to contact Snohomish County Land Use Department and have them have a conversation about R5. It's zoned R5, so what can we do with that? It gives your buyer an opportunity to talk to an architect and an engineer to have them look, and oftentimes architects and engineers have contacts for land use review specialists, which can review the zoning code and provide you with information as to whether or not you could even get permits, land use and building permits to build your house on this vacant land. It takes a lot of time too, and that's why we're 90 days out on closing, 60 days on the due diligence. But your due diligence as a buyer broker is to have information to provide to your buyer, like, hey, this site's on a well. We need to find you, or they need to find themselves somebody who could test the well. This site also has a septic. We need to find somebody that can do a septic inspection. This site has power. We need to make sure how much power. The main thing, the most important thing that you want is your buyer's paying cash $190,000. The last thing you want to have happen is they pay $190,000, it closes, and at the end of the day, they are not able to get the permits they need to build their house. And now what? So this feasibility contingency is so important to share with your client, and they're going to have questions, like they're not going to know where to start. They are gonna need to start with the jurisdiction, but you need to guide them. They guide them to, you know, certain websites that have or contacts people that you have in the industry that you know, like, oh, hopefully you have a couple different people that are do septic inspections and well inspections, but what's mostly like concerning with vacant land initially, this in this particular vacant land, I feel pretty good about it just because it does have a well, but we also have to figure out, we have to look at title and see if that well, that shared well agreement is recorded and if it could be easily transferred to a new buyer. There's just so many things that need to occur, and that's why you need the enough time to really make sure that this property can be built on. This also goes into property access, basically just stating that buyers agents, representatives, consultants, architects, engineers shall have the right to, from time to time, enter the property and conduct any tests or studies that may be needed. It may be needed that you need a soil testing. It may be needed that you need a geotechnical report. This is where having an architect and an engineer is very important, to determine that the land and the soil is feasible to even build on. There's just so many things that need to be taken into consideration when you are writing up this offer. You're explaining to your buyers, like, look, this is, and it's gonna cost money. It's not cheap to do this. So there's a lot of money that goes into determining whether or not this property is feasible. And so your buyers also need to be aware of that. At the very bottom here, agreement terminated if notice of satisfaction not timely provided. So if checked, this agreement shall terminate and the buyer shall receive a refund of the earnest money unless buyer gives notice to the seller on or before the feasibility contingency expiration date that the property is suitable for the buyer's intended purpose. I would go ahead and check that box, but you also have to keep this 60-day timeline in place. Like, you have to be cognizant of it. And what I always do after I get mutual acceptance with any agreement is I figure out all my timelines. I send an email to the escrow company, the title company, the listing broker, the listing broker's firm, my buyer, pretty much everybody that has, hey, mutual acceptance happened on this date. I show that earnest money will be deposited on this date. The feasibility study will be satisfied by this date. All of the dates that we are adding to each contract, I write them in an email and I share them with all parties. That way, if there is a discrepancy, it's known up front. Maybe the listing broker thought that mutual acceptance happened on December 1st, and you show that mutual acceptance happened on November 30th. Well, if it's in writing and it's in an email and it's clear, it could be caught right away. Oh shoot, yep, you're right, it was first. Thanks for, and then you have the ability to ensure that all parties are on the same page. Okay, so we're still in Wizard. We filled out all of these forms. Now I'm going to hit next. These are the documents, the supplement documents that the listing broker had on the listing. So we'll go ahead and hit done. Now we're done. We're done with all of the forms and we are ready to start signing. We're going to go ahead and go to signings and we are going to add a signing. Offer on property of buyer Smith. There, already got it there. Offer on property for buyer Smith on this day. Go ahead and save it. This is where you add your signers and the documents that they're going to be signing. So I'm going to add participants. I'm going to add from the transaction. I want to add my buyer Smith here. We're going to select, and there we go. We got him added. We're going to add the forms. So we're going to add the vacant land purchase and sale agreement, the optional clause addendum, the title contingency addendum, the well addendum, the septic addendum, the 22K utilities addendum. Want that feasibility in there. And then we will add, he doesn't have them titled, but I know one is a Form 17. These are documents. You can see the difference here. It says form versus documents. Forms we can modify right now. Documents we cannot. So this is probably the legal description. This is probably the Form 17 that document, and then this is probably that map that he included, or she, I'm sorry, the listing broker. We're going to go ahead and close out this. And it's my AuthentiSign is set up to automatically map where everybody needs to sign or where my buyer needs to sign. And actually, one thing I'm going to do before I go through all this, I want to see. So I don't need this map. I'm going to click on it and I'm just going to remove it from the file. I'm going to look at this. I want to see what this is. That's the Form 17. Okay. So we'll keep the Form 17. This is the legal description. I want this legal description to follow the actual purchase and sale agreement. So I just like to kind of organize my documents in a way that's easy for me. I like to have optional clauses up top, title, the well, the septic, and the utilities. I also want my feasibility right up top too. And then the Form 17 is last. Okay, so we're going to go through and make sure that all of the buyer's initials are where they're supposed to be. We only have one buyer here. Like everything's good. I'm going to find the legal description is going to need initials. So you're going to go to tools and you're going to drag and drop the initials. Automatically adds the date there. If it doesn't, you can hit the auto date, and that's just another way you can set that up. And keep going. Feasibility study looks good. Our optional clauses, we got signatures there. We're going to be coming up to the Form 17 here. Here's the Form 17. Here's another form that you will have to add a signature line to. The form is 6 pages, and it's very important that your client looks at every section of this agreement. And what you would want to go ahead and do is drag and drop a sign here. This is buyer's acknowledgement of Form 17. Now, some agents have their buyer sign the buyer's waiver of right to revoke the offer, but unless you're competing with other offers, I don't like to do that, because one of the things that can happen sometimes, buyers get cold feet or they don't like what they're seeing on the Form 17. It says right here, buyer shall have 3 days from the day seller or seller's agent delivers this disclosure statement to rescind the agreement by delivering a separately signed written statement of rescission to seller or seller's agent. Okay, so if you leave this blank, the buyer has the right within 3 days to revoke the entire offer and get its earnest money back, regardless of any other items concerning the contract. So now I'm going to, I feel good about my offer. I am going to hit the next button, and I am going to send this. I'm not going to worry about the expiration date, but I am going to send it. And I'm going to get an email because I'm the buyersmith. And once that happens, I'm actually waiting for my email. Let's see what we got here. There it is. Your signature is requested. I can start signing this agreement, okay? And hopefully, when your buyer receives this agreement, they accept and they read each I'm going to set the signature. They hopefully they read each document, right? It's going to automatically skip over to the next signature that you need to fill out, but really like encourage them to read these documents, not just sign them willy-nilly. We want to have them really take their time and understand what they're signing. I'm signing fast right now because I want you to see what it looks like when we're done. So congratulations, you're done. You've signed the agreement, and I should be getting, yep, there, I got a notification that it's been accepted. I should also be getting the document. So so what I'm going to do, gone into Authentisign, typically I feel like I get in, there it is. You get a PDF of all of the forms that were signed. So you open this up, and it's been signed by Buyersmith. Okay, and all of these documents are documents that you are going to be sending, like I said, to, well, and you're going to be sending these documents, and let's see if there's a way to download them as one document, individual. way to view the signed PDF. Okay, so I prefer to use the just one email. So what I did was I went into signings and saw that the signings were complete, and I clicked on the completed offer and I want to view the signed PDF document. So this is going to be just all of the document put together in one doc. And then what I do is I save it as a PDF. I save it to a file that I've created. I'll create a new file here. Smith offer XXX buyer Smith offer, and then the date. And then I will take that document, I will email it to the listing broker and the listing broker firm. And that can be found, that information can be found on the very first page of the purchase and sale agreement. So the firm document, which is very important that you send it to the firm document along with the listing broker, and let them know, give them a courtesy call and let them know, hey, I'm sending, they should already know that you're working on an offer because you have questions and you should be in communication. It amazes me how many brokers are not in consistent communication with their with each other. I'm sorry, I was just looking that my feasibility contingency was 70 days expired, and I believe I had it 60 days. So I made a mistake there, just so we know that. But that's why I go through, you go through this before you send it off. And yes, sometimes it's a pain in the butt to have to go back and make some changes. But if you did make a mistake like I did, you want to make sure you fix that. But like I was starting to say, it's very important to be in communication with the listing broker, start building that relationship with them so you can have a smooth transaction. And I think for this particular presentation, I'm going to wrap up for the day. I think that there's hopefully you guys got something out of it. I appreciate you taking the time to review it, and hopefully it's helpful. And if there's any questions that anybody has, I'm always available to answer questions. You can call me on my cell phone, which is 425-308-8710, or you can email me at melissa@skylineproperties.com. I really just want to make sure people know that I'm available to assist with any type of questions that may be had with vacant land purchases. So thank you for your time today, and I am going to go ahead and call it